Would anyone in this room consider themselves to be a failure? Would anyone in this room think of themselves as a loser or unsuccessful? Well, standing before you, ladies and gentlemen, is a failure. I have been bad, I've been the worst, I've been a loser, I've been unsuccessful. In fact, I have failed at almost everything I have attempted in my entire life. I would like to share with you now the importance of failure in my life and how by challenging myself through these failures has made me into the person that I am today. Most of my early life experiences I can relate to in sport. My competitive sports career began when I was 6 years old. And in a genre such as sport, where there was so much emphasis put on winning, I can honestly say I've learned the most from my failures. I can remember one summer in particular, I wasn't selected to play on a summer basketball league in my hometown. I was devastated. It was particularly frustrating because the courts on which the games were to be played were within walking distance of my parents' house. They were the same courts I played on and practiced every day. All the other children that I played with at this particular park got into the league, and I didn't. I was devastated. Eventually, with the apprehensive help from a phone call from my mother, I was very hesitantly accepted into the league. And I was not the best player. I was a tall, lanky, skinny, freckle-faced 14-year-old girl. I don't know what's harder for you all to believe, that I've been this tall since I was 12 or 13, or to believe that I was actually skinny. But I was a tall, lanky, skinny 14-year-old girl, and I found myself to be a little bit weaker than my teammates and competitors. I found it to be quite a challenge in this league. I didn't start ever. One game I didn't play at all, and after that game I ran home with my basketball under my arm and I said, "Mommy, I want to quit. This is too hard." The most playing time I ever got was maybe 2 minutes here or there, maybe 3 minutes, and the most points I ever scored in a game were 6. If my memory serves me correctly, they all came from the free throw line because it was much easier for my competitors to knock me to the blacktop than risk the humiliation that I would score on them. Can you believe that I actually got heckled? Knock that girl down, show that girl, don't let that girl score on you. And the bad part is, the people in the stands were mostly the parents of the other children. But I went to every practice and I went to every game, and you know what I got for all this at the end of the season? The Best Sportsmanship Award. Best Sportsmanship Award? Seriously? That's worse than miscongeniality. So for a skinny, freckle-faced 14-year-old little girl who just wanted to play basketball, I think you all can agree that was not a success. It was a failure. My failures didn't end with my youth sports career. They continued into my collegiate coaching career. At the tender age of 28 years old, I was named the youngest Division I head coach in America, male or female. Now, I haven't done the research myself, but that's what was written in all the newspapers, and as we all know, if it's written in the newspaper, it must be true. And we were terrible, terrible. Anyone want to guess who had the nation, America's a big country, the nation's longest losing streak? My team. Anyone guess who had the most losses in a season in university history? My team. And I have to admit, I'm tied for this one, but I currently am tied for the position of worst single-season record ever. I was ridiculed by the press. I was criticized by parents and athletes and players. The media dragged me through the mud. Everything I tried to do to get this program back on track was unsuccessful. Obviously, I wasn't rehired the following season. I guess you all agree, failure. Let's fast forward a few years. I'm living in Switzerland. I'm teaching at one of the big international schools here, still playing basketball, believe it or not. And I decide I'm going to try my hand in the business world. I'm going to start a business. The business was a recruiting company to help Swiss female basketball players, get playing positions in America, either professionally or collegiately. And to help these players play in the USA, I came up with a really creative name. The name of the company was play in the USA. I had a website and I had business cards, and like I said, I had a day job, so I spent my evenings and my weekends working and recruiting and going all over the country and selling and marketing and everything I could do. You know how many clients I got? 3. And by 3, I mean 1. I got 1 client. And to be honest, she didn't pass her exams and was unable to accept the scholarship that I'd worked so hard to get for her. You know how much money I made from this company? 0. Negative, actually. Not one single rapid, not 1 cent, not 1 euro, not 1 mark, not 1 anything. And for all the time and all the energy and all the money and all the effort I put into this business, I fell flat on my face. Anyone need a Kleenex? We're good? So I think you would all agree with me when I say standing before you, ladies and gentlemen, is a failure. Well, one thing I learned in life pretty early was it's easy to achieve your goals if you set your standards nice and low. It's easy to be successful if you put the bar about right here. But one thing I learned pretty early in my life was it was my responsibility to challenge myself. It was my responsibility to set the bar high enough that it wasn't easy to reach. Because if it's easy to reach, you'll never reach your full potential. You have to set the bar high enough that it takes you a couple tries. If you're ever comfortable with mediocrity, you will remain mediocre. It's like this. If you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth and you say, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to lay on the couch and watch TV. You're going to accomplish this every time. The only way you can mess that up is if you forget to brush your teeth and then you're just nasty. But if you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth and you say, today I'm going to change things. Today I'm going to challenge myself. Today I want to be more successful. I want to be better. Today I'm going to make that team. Today I'm going to win that championship. Today I'm going to start that business. This is when things get hard. This is when you hit some bumps in the road. But this is the most important time to realize success is not something that you are. Success is a process. Harvard Business School did a study where they studied a group of students, and they studied that same group of students 10 years later. The findings were very interesting. The students that were more successful 10 years later were not the ones that were successful 10 years before, not the best students, the ones with the best grades, the ones that were successful then. The ones that were successful 10 years later were the students that set the highest goals for themselves 10 years before. The ones that raised the bar for themselves. The ones who challenged themselves. You see, it's like this. If you go out tomorrow and you run a mile, and for those of you that are from countries where you have measurement systems that make sense, a mile is 1,600 meters. So if you go out and you run your mile, and let's say you run it in 7 minutes. Well, with a 7-minute mile, you're never going to go to the Olympics. But for someone my age with my sports injuries, a little bit overweight, 7 minutes is actually not that bad. Okay, so you run your 7-minute mile. The next day you say, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to run a 7-minute mile. You're going to accomplish this. Right? Success. You're going to run a 7-minute mile every day that week. Well done. You're going to accomplish this. But you're not going to get any better. Now, if you wake up the next day and after you run your 7-minute mile and you say, you know what, I'm going to run a 6-minute mile. Today, I'm going to run a 6-minute mile. You know what's going to happen? You're going to fail. You know why? It's impossible to improve your mile time by a minute. I'm a track coach, track athlete. You cannot drop a minute off your mile time in one day. It's never going to happen. So you're going to fail. And you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail, and you're going to fail. You might fail 10 times before you get your 6-minute mile. You might fail 20 times before you get your 6-minute mile. You might fail 50 times, 100 times. You might go the rest of your life and never run a 6-minute mile. But you're going to get better. You're going to raise the bar for yourself. You're going to get faster. You're going to get stronger. You're going to find out what your full potential is. So remember that business, Play in the USA? There was an article in Forbes magazine that said 80% of startup companies fail in the first 18 months. One of the reasons being, there's not a market, not a sufficient market to sustain the companies. It's like this: if you create the world's greatest snow shovel, and you set up your market in Hawaii, you're not going to sell many snow shovels because there's no market for snow shovels in Hawaii. That was the thing with Play in the USA. See, Switzerland being a small country and not being a basketball powerhouse, and America being a huge country, and perhaps the best basketball country in the world, there wasn't enough players to have a business. Maybe enough players to have a hobby, but not enough players that I could run a business. So I was talking to one of my friends, and I said, hey, this is just not working, this Play in the USA. I don't know. So you know what we could do? Maybe we could do some kids' events. Teach the kids the love of sport that I always had from the ground up. Not just give them a ball and say, go play. Let's have them in professional sports halls with professional athletes. Let's teach them music, but with professional musicians. Let's have them learn cooking from professional chefs. Let's take them to the forest and let them touch worms and scrape their knees and come home dirty. Arts and crafts. We're brainstorming these ideas. Well, I had to go to German class. I came back from German class. My friend happened to be a graphic designer and had a logo and a flyer, kids camp. I said, okay, well, I guess we're going to do some camps. And better than that, the feedback we got from parents was our kids cannot wait to get to camp in the morning. When they have to go to school, they cry in the morning. The only time they cry during camp is when they have to come home. Somehow, can we implement this fantastic motivation that these kids have to come to your camps and put it into a school atmosphere? You know, when a lot of schools these days are lacking in the music, the sports, all these cool things that the kids love to do, that we focus on that in the school. Why don't you do that, Ina? Why don't you start a school? I said, well, I'm just a stupid basketball player. I don't know how to start a school. Not only do I not know how to, I don't know anyone that ever started. I don't know anyone who knows someone who ever started a school. So I started a school. And our camp started with 26 children in the first camp. Now we have over 400 campers per year. The school, we started with 3 children. Now we have over 200 students in our school. My point is, though, if it wasn't for the failure of Play in the USA and learning about having a good market, I would never have had the chance to start a successful business. And more importantly, I'm happier than I've ever been. And you know that coach that couldn't win a game? I forgot to tell you a little bit about that story. You see, I was offered the job in the middle of the season. The team was already losing. The head coach quit in the middle of the season and left. And they said, hey, Ina, do you want to come and take care of this mess? And I knew I wasn't going to be popular, and I knew I was probably setting myself up for failure. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but somehow I knew I had to take this chance. I had to take this challenge. I had to implement some work ethic and discipline. I had to try to turn this program around. And we were terrible. But I'll tell you what, we had a losing season, and that was the last losing season I ever had in my coaching career. And I learned a lot. Most important thing I learned about that experience was the press. Is there anyone from the press here? Don't listen to them. If they have something great to say about you, fantastic. If they have something terrible to say about you, fantastic. Don't listen to either one. The other thing I learned was sometimes when we fail, it's not how we learn to do something. Sometimes we learn how we don't want to do something. And I definitely learned how I didn't want to run a program. But from those experiences, I learned how to build a winning program. I ended up coaching at 3 other Division I universities. Then my last stop, you might have heard of the place, University of Basel, right down the road here. And the NLB in 2010, we won the national championship in Switzerland, regular season and Final Four. In 2012, we won the National University Championships of Switzerland, going undefeated in university play, beating Geneva by over 20 points in the final game. But you see, if it wasn't for the failure of my first coaching job, I wouldn't have learned how to build a successful program. Remember that skinny, freckle-faced little girl who just wanted to play basketball? Something I forgot to tell you about her, too. You see, she was already the best player in the girls' league. But that summer and all the summers before, they didn't offer a league for the girls, only for the boys. So if she was going to play, she had to play with the boys. Because 30 years ago, put whatever time frame you want, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, now, 100 years ago, little girls might have had the same dreams, but little girls didn't always have the same opportunities. So if I wanted to play, I had to go play with the boys. Was it fair? I don't know if it was fair or not. But you know what happened? I got better. I got stronger. I got faster. By not being the best player in the league, I learned I had to work harder than everybody else. And yeah, I got knocked down to the blacktop. Yeah, I got heckled by fans. Yeah, I went home with my ball under my arm and cried to my mommy it was too hard. But we can all learn a lot from this 14-year-old girl, because sometimes life knocks you down. And you can lay on the blacktop and feel sorry for yourself, or you can brush yourself off and you can keep playing. Sometimes someone's going to heckle you. They might have an opinion on what you're doing. They might think they know everything better than you. Someone's going to heckle you from the sidelines. Well, you know what? They're on the sidelines where they need to be, and you are on the court. Keep playing. And when you go home to your mommy with your basketball under your arm and you say, Mommy, it's too hard, it's not fair, I'll give you my mother's email address. You can write her an email, because she's going to tell you the same damn thing she told me 30 years ago. Quitting is not an option. You keep playing. And that's what that little girl did. She kept playing. And she got playing, and sure, she got knocked down again. She got knocked down lots of times. Sure, she got heckled again. She ignored them. Sure, she called her mom crying, telling her it was too hard, but she kept playing. You know what that little freckle-faced little girl did? She broke every scoring record that school had. Single game, single season career. That little girl got in the Hall of Fame. That little girl got a full Division I basketball scholarship. And you know what, that skinny little girl who they didn't want to let play in that league, you know what she did? She became a professional basketball player, and she played all over the world. You see, my message is simple. A person is not a failure nor a success. Success is not something that you are. Success is a process. Success is something that you go through. Success is something that you endure. Success is something you keep playing. And failure is a small but very, very important part of success. And in case anyone's curious, the best mile time I ever ran in my life, 6 minutes and 1 second. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, standing before you is a... Thank you.